and she will be giving comments in just a few moments. Finally, I have to thank the executive branch of the government because, as you know, when these things occur, if you know me, I try to get in touch with as many people as possible. Most of what we have to deal with here today is an executive function, and so we've been in contact with the executive branch of the government. And my staff. My staff started working on this on Friday, and my staff worked on this Friday, starting Friday morning, all day Friday, and then on Saturday. I especially want to thank the staffer who went with me as we went to bring Ms. Hernandez and her son, Eduardo, back to Texas, back to Houston. I want to thank Ruben. Ruben is just a wonderful person to have on your team. He drove there and drove back. We did it together, but Ruben did the driving. I was but a passenger as he drove, and this was late into the night. We did not return until around 2:30 a.m. in the morning to Texas Children's Hospital, at which time the nephrology team was there, and they greeted us, and they immediately had an opportunity to visit with Eduardo. Now, the narrative, if I may. But wait, I have to do this. There are other persons here from Texas Children's Hospital. I was hoping that we would get just one person. They've asked that I not name them. They are worker bees, but we have a total of 4 people here today. And it's important to note that this hospital has extended the hand of friendship. They have been readily available. We have made calls late into the evening to get information when needed, and they've always responded. There will never be enough thank yous for Texas Children's Hospital for what they have done in many other circumstances, and I thank them especially for what they've done with this circumstance. Friends, we received a call from Texas Children's Hospital on Friday of last week. And when we received this call, we were immediately pressed into action because I was informed at that time that a mother and her child had been deported to Mexico, and that this mother had a child with her who was in need of some immediate attention. The child would need dialysis. Well, having had some experience with this with a friend of mine, I knew that this was something that necessitated immediate attention. We started the work of trying to get them back into the country. But it's important for you to know that they came to this country many years ago when Eduardo was about 3 years of age. He is now 14 years of age. And in this country, she has traversed from this state to Florida. She spent some time to Florida. One of her babies was born in Florida. These are all her children. She has a total of 2, 4, 5, 6 children. And I won't name all of them, but I think it's important to let you know that we have Emily, Naomi, Jeremy, Ariel, and Skylight as children, and they are all here with us saving Eduardo. Eduardo is over at the hospital. We, understanding the exigency that we were dealing with, and understanding that the mother came here and she went to Florida, came back to Texas, spent the rest of her time in Texas. She's not committed any offenses. She is a person who has worked hard. She's been taking care of her family. She is a taxpayer. In fact, she has an appointment with the IRS that she'll be keeping, and she was concerned about that. Notwithstanding all that was happening to her family, she wanted to make sure she kept her appointment with the IRS to talk about taxes. She, on or about a week or so ago, went into the San Antonio area. And in so doing, she encountered an officer of the law. She was stopped. She was truthful when asked questions about where she was from and whether she had documents. She's indicated she did not. And there was a warrant for her arrest, and these officers executed that warrant because she had had a deportation hearing many years ago. And at that deportation hearing, it was concluded that she should be removed from the country, our country. Well, she did not leave the country. She was here with her children, and she stayed on, and that's why she had this warrant for her arrest. So the officers did their job. We're not complaining about these officers. We understand the predicament that they find themselves in quite often. She was taken to a station wherein she was transferred from the car, the vehicle of the officers that stopped her, and then she was placed into another vehicle, and she was taken across the border into Mexico. And the fortunate thing for her is that at that border location, she was weeping, and a Good Samaritan approached her and offered her lodging. This Good Samaritan did not know her. She doesn't know anyone in Mexico. She's not from Mexico. She does not have connections in Mexico. But this Good Samaritan took her in, and she went to the home of a person that she did not know and who did not know her. She stayed with this person and stayed there until we were able to get her permission to come back into the country. It's important to note that while she was there, she did try to get dialysis for her son, who needs this dialysis 3 times a week. The doctor will say more about it. But this was discovered when he was in an accident some months ago. Approximately 4 months ago is when he started dialysis. So he has not been on dialysis for some long period of time, but for about 4 months ago, and this was following an accident that he was involved in with a vehicle. Well, understanding that her son needed the dialysis, she sought to get the help there in Mexico. Their system is quite different from ours. Here we have, thank God, Texas Children's Hospital and similar institutions. But in Mexico, this type of function is performed by private facilities, private doctors who do this. It's not a public function as we have it here. So she was unable to get the help for her son. And my belief is that, and the doctor can fill in the blanks, I keep saying this and then saying more than I probably should, but my belief is that this was quite expensive to get this done there. The number that comes to mind is around $700 per visit. And this has to be done 3 times a week, so you can do the math. So unable to get it. So my office, still involved. We decided that we had to make phone calls. We made phone calls. I need not give the specificities associated with the calls, but we did make these calls, and we got a positive response. I was here at a town hall meeting when I got the response. I immediately left the town meeting because the response was positive, and we were told that she would be processed and that she would be released to come back to the United States along with her son, Ms. Hernandez and Eduardo. Along the way, traversing the distance to pick them up at the border, we received a call, and the indication was that, yes, he would be able to return with his mom, but that it would be for a period of about 14 days. 14 days. I talked to the officer who was processing her, and we talked about it. No need to get into the details, but I'm grateful for the 14 days. But obviously, a person needing dialysis 3 times a week in a place wherein you have no connections, no friends, no job, and you're not a person of means, that makes this something that is unacceptable. It's just unacceptable that he will have 14 days in this country and then have to go back. His mother would have to go back. I have the document here. While it's something that has a major impact on them, these are small pieces of paper. These are the documents that indicate when they must return. I don't mind telling you that the return date is May the 27th. And one is for mom and one is for son. Well, this is unacceptable. And I'm not angry with those officers, nor am I in any way disenchanted with the people that have helped us along the way. We're at a point now where we have to deal with this process that will allow them to be here until the 27th, upon which time they must return. We have to find a way to deal with this such that he can continue to get his dialysis as a patient at the hospital that he was in at the time he was removed from the country. So this is not Texas Children reaching across the border and saying, we want to help this person who we've heard something about who needs help. This is one of their own. This is one of the members of their clientele, if you will, that they want to assist because they know the urgency associated with the need. And I commend them for doing so. I am going to do each and everything that I can when I go back to Washington to make sure that we can keep this child in this hospital so that he can get his needs taken care of. To do otherwise, in my opinion, would be a dereliction of my duty as a human being to another human being. This is not really about being a congressman. This is about the moral imperative that one has to help people when you find them living in circumstances such as this. I am so grateful that we have people at Texas Children's Hospital who care enough to reach out to us so that we can use our good offices to be of assistance. So at this time, I'm going to ask the doctor who has intimate knowledge of what's going on, who can explain much better than I the needs, but who cares about this child, who is right now at Texas Children's Hospital, by the way. He's there now. We couldn't bring him here today because he's at the hospital. He's going to need this attention. This doctor knows the needs and will give you a further explanation. So Dr. Braun, I want to thank you so much, and I want to commend you for what you have done as a humanitarian, not just a doctor, but a person who cares about people. We thank you for it, and I ask if you would step over so that all of the folk may be able to see and hear you as you make your commentary.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Braun. I'm the Chief of Pediatric Nephrology at Texas Children's Hospital, and I'm a professor in the Department of Pediatrics at Baylor College of Medicine. So our service got to meet Eduardo in October when he was brought to the emergency room at Texas Children's following a car accident. While his automobile injuries were dealt with relatively quickly as part of his evaluation of his trauma, we found out that he was suffering from severe kidney failure. This was something that he was most likely born with and had started not really to display symptoms of kidney failure, but he clearly had evidence on his lab tests that he was going to need dialysis. So we became quite familiar with his family, his mom and his siblings over 3 or 4 months, and then Eduardo started chronic dialysis in February of this year. So for those of you who don't know, chronic dialysis is usually performed 3 times a week. So Eduardo is hooked up to a dialysis machine. He comes to the hospital 3 times a week and is hooked up to a hemodialysis machine for 4 hours every treatment. So he's been spending about 12 to 15 hours a week under our care since October. And he has several dozen medications that he needs to take regularly to stay alive, in addition to his dialysis treatments. And he's on a very restricted diet and has to be very careful about watching what he eats and drinks. So Eduardo and his mother have been committed and wonderful supporters. They've kept Eduardo in excellent health, and he's made real progress in terms of his overall well-being, his growth, his energy levels. And then we found out that he had been deported, and as of last Friday, he'd missed an entire week of dialysis. And again, dialysis is life-sustaining therapy, so you can miss a dialysis treatment or two, but if you miss a week of dialysis, there is a significant risk that Eduardo might die. We worry that every day it was potentially going to be his last day on Earth. And so we had been struggling very hard to try and find care for him in Mexico. Unfortunately, because of the sort of unique nature of his problems and that he is a child, those resources were not available to him. And really, I have the privilege of working at one of the best pediatric nephrology centers in the world. We have a group of over 20 physicians that work there, dozens of allied health people who are all committed to the care of patients with kidney failure. And the type of resources that we have to support children with kidney failure are not available in many places, and unfortunately are not available in Mexico, particularly in the region where he was. So I would just like to express my heartfelt thanks to Congressman Green's office. There were a number of very happy people early Sunday morning when Eduardo and his mom rolled into the hospital. And he was immediately evaluated in the emergency room and then admitted to our intensive care unit, where he received dialysis shortly after he was admitted. Eduardo is doing very well, and so we are delighted to have him back in our care. Because we are committed to the care of children with kidney disease, and we are delighted that we can continue the care that we've been giving him and his family.
Didn't mean to bump you.
Sure.
Okay, if you'll just step to my right again. Let me remind you that when we arrived at approximately 2:30 a.m., this doctor was there to receive the patient. And a good number of the members of his nephrology team were there with him. I think that speaks volumes about Texas Children's Hospital. Now we have the lawyer who is rendering her services pro bono. This is something that they volunteered to do. And I am very proud to call this law firm Friends of People. They are people of goodwill at this law firm. Attorney Salim is not with us today, but she sent someone who is very talented and who does outstanding work. So at this time, I'm going to ask Attorney Jimenez to give her commentary. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, all. My name is Attorney Karina Jimenez. I'm an immigration attorney at the Law Office of Naima Salem. We are so relieved that Ms. Hernandez and her son are back in the U.S., and we want to express our heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Braun and especially to Congressman Al Green for their efforts in making sure that this happens. Our immigration system is one that is very difficult. Under normal circumstances, a request for humanitarian parole can take months, even over a year, to get adjudicated by USCIS. In this case, the facts were so extreme and so dire that Eduardo, a 14-year-old boy that needed life-saving treatment, warranted that CBP officers grant him a humanitarian parole from the border. This is not common. It is something that is very rarely done, and frankly, in this situation, we are relieved because this young man gets to see another day of life and receive treatment. This is another example of why this country desperately needs an immigration reform that is more sensible. An individual who is seeking a humanitarian parole under most circumstances doesn't have sight on their time. And Eduardo's case is a great example of that. He had days to live without receiving dialysis treatment. And we are so grateful that Mr. Green and his team have worked with us in facilitating that he be paroled into the U.S. As Mr. Green mentioned, his parole is only for a period of approximately 2 weeks. We hope and we pray that the Department of Homeland Security will do what is right in this case and will extend that parole. Eduardo desperately needs this treatment. Without it, frankly, he cannot live. And so we plead with the U.S. government and the officers of the Department of Homeland Security to work with us and to extend this parole so that way he can continue receiving treatment. Thank you.
Excuse me. Oh, in Spanish, please.
Sí. En este caso, la señora Hernández y su hijo, una familia hondureña, fueron deportados a México. Lamentablemente, el muchacho Eduardo requiere tratamiento de diálisis 3 veces a la semana. Sin su tratamiento, no era probable que Eduardo podía seguir viviendo. Con la ayuda de su doctor, Dr. Brand, y con el congresista Al Green, pudimos lograr que Eduardo y su mamá podían entrar a los Estados Unidos con un parol humanitario. Eso es algo que no es común, pero en este caso estamos muy contentos que pudieron entrar, porque ahora Eduardo en este momento se encuentra en el hospital donde está recibiendo sus tratamientos. En casos normal, usualmente la oficina de inmigración se tarda meses, hasta 1 año, para hacer una decisión para un parol humanitario. Y en este caso se pudo lograr, porque es un caso extremo, que el muchacho se requiere ese tratamiento urgentemente para que él pueda seguir viviendo. Y con mucho esfuerzo del congresista señor Green y el doctor pudimos lograr que el muchacho y su mamá podían entrar a los Estados Unidos. Ahora esa entrada nomás es válida para 2 semanas. Esperamos que el Departamento de Seguridad Nacional lo puede extender. Eso sería lo correcto. Este muchacho requiere de servicios médicos y sin esos servicios él no puede vivir. Y esperamos que este caso sea un ejemplo para todos los Estados Unidos, que se requiere una reforma inmigratoria para que estas cosas no sucedan.
Thank you. Just one additional comment, and then we'll take questions. Mom is available, but we will limit her commentary at this time. Final comment is this. It is true that this is evidence of the need for us to repair our immigration system. This is a system that has not been overhauled in many years. It's time for us to give it serious consideration and to do what's necessary to make it function given the current needs of our country and given the current needs that we see beyond the borders of our country. I don't think that it's unreasonable to think that it's time for us to carefully examine our system so as to make the necessary changes to enhance its functionality. With this said, I want to thank you again for being here. And if I did not mention the nun, I'm not sure that I did, but I just want to say this about her. This lady, we found her quite by accident. We were calling around to try to get the name of someone or some place where she could just be kept until we could arrive at the border. We were going to Eagle Pass from Texas, here in Houston. Well, just by accident, she happened to be there and available and volunteered to go over and meet Ms. Hernandez when she was released. And after that, she agreed to meet us at some place on the other side of San Antonio at a service station. And she provided food. She gave them sandwiches. She really fulfilled that requirement in Matthew 25, for those of you who follow these things, of when I was hungry, you gave me food. When I was thirsty, you brought me drink. She did this, and I will be eternally grateful to her, another Good Samaritan. We have been blessed to have many people of goodwill to help us to get to this point, and we will need the assistance of additional people of goodwill to help us get Eduardo the kind of treatment that he needs on an ongoing basis at Texas Children's Hospital. With this said, I will now accept questions from the press. Yes. Would you identify yourself? Yes.
Congressman, how was the dialysis being paid for prior to him being deported, and who's paying for it now? Or how's that, how are they reporting it?
Okay. I'll be terse. It is not being paid for with tax dollars. Texas Children's Hospital is one of the preeminent not-for-profit institutions of its kind. And they have within that institution a charitable program. And this kind of aid and assistance comes under that charitable program. Now, having said that, I'm going to allow someone who has a hands-on experience with the charitable program to give you some additional commentary. Doctor, if you would.
So his care, again, is provided as part of the public service that the hospital does, as part of its nonprofit arm. These resources are available to any resident of Texas, and they evaluate an individual's ability to pay for care that they receive or inability to pay for care that they receive. And so that's how that his care is being supported.
And that was even prior to him being deported.
That's correct.
It's my understanding it's been at all times since he's been at the hospital.
Do we know, I mean, how long he'll need this treatment? I know you said you're looking for an answer to get his stay extended, but how long would be enough, you know, for that to be extended?
Doctor, if you would.
Yes, so as you may know, there is no treatment for end-stage kidney disease. So Eduardo will need dialysis to stay alive indefinitely, or until potentially he could get a kidney transplant.
And it's my hope that we'll get that kidney transplant for him such that he will no longer need the dialysis treatment. But until then, this is life-sustaining treatment that he needs. And he's not the only child who needs it. There are many children who need it. There are many children who need it and are right here in Houston, Texas. But there are many children across the globe who need it. This child was in that hospital, came to that hospital as a result of an accident. This hospital, in my opinion, did the righteous thing by allowing this child to receive aid and comfort, which is what we do. This is how we function as a great nation.
And just final question for me, regardless of the sensitivity of this, there will be people who watch and who ask or who say, if you want these kind of services, if you want to be here, then do it legally. There's always those people. What do you say to the people who say, you know, you should have entered the country legally and you should not have been here illegally?
Well, I say to them, if I lived on the other side of that border, and if I found myself being persecuted, I would be at that border trying to get into this country. And my guess is a good many of them would too. I'm realistic about the world and the problems that we all have to confront. This is a great country, and a part of the greatness of this country is that we have accepted people over its existence as the United States to give them aid and comfort. But let me give you an additional example or two. In this country, if you are a person who finds yourself having committed an offense, and in the process of committing that offense, you should be wounded in some way, we will give you aid and comfort. Doesn't matter the offense. If you're on death row and you're to meet your maker in the next week or so and you get sick, we give you aid and comfort. We give aid and comfort to people who need aid and comfort in this country. If you're an enemy combatant and you are engaged in mortal combat with our country and you should be wounded, we're going to give you aid and comfort. We cannot now decide to draw the line when a child needs aid and comfort who has been here, not brought here of his own volition. His mother was trying to do the best that she could for her family. We have problems in this hemisphere that have to be dealt with, that we have not dealt with appropriately, and we're not going to let that circumstance prevent us from providing aid and comfort to people who are in this country. That's the greatness of America.
Is the fact of the matter, if their stay isn't extended, then Eduardo has to go back and there's no chance of him getting any sort of health care there. That's the outlook for them right now, correct?
Well, that's the way I see it, and I think there are others who would agree with me. First of all, they're from Honduras. They were sent to a place just across the border from Eagle Pass in Mexico. They don't know people there. I could probably survive as well as they could there, and I don't speak the language. But at least I would have contacts back here that could get me home at some time, and I would feel certain about it. But for them, This was like being placed in a distant planet almost. They know no one there. The child needs immediate attention 3 times a week, and they also need the basic necessities of life, food, clothing, and shelter. So this country did the right thing. This hospital did the right thing. We just now have to assure ourselves that he will have the opportunity to get the treatment that he needs so that his life can continue. I don't know what he has in store for him in the future. There is no way to know what this child might do for this country, and I'd like to find out. He's here. And by the way, I regret that you can't see him. He's a fine boy. He really is. And if you saw him, you would immediately have some great appreciation for him. He has a nice, beautiful attitude. I'm proud that he's a part of our country.
In terms of his stay being extended, how would that happen? Who could make that decision?
Well, that's a decision, generally speaking, that's made by some department within the executive branch. I won't go to the specificities, but generally a department in the executive branch. And it's been my experience in working with the executive branch that there are people who will listen and people who will give consideration to circumstances that carry the exigency that this one does. My belief is that we will get a hearing. And if people will listen, I believe they'll be touched. And I hope that that will cause them to act appropriately.
Does the expiration of Title 42 and the enforcement of Title 8 impact their situation?
I don't think so, but I have a capable, competent, and qualified lawyer who will speak to this in greater detail. My opinion as a lay lawyer is that this has very little to do with Title 42 and Title 8. But here's a lawyer par excellence who can address it much better than I.
Yes. Title 42 and Title 8 don't really impact this case. So regardless of Title 42 and Title 8, the manner to request humanitarian parole has always existed. So they don't impact Ms. Hernandez's case per se. Títulos 24 y 8 realmente no afectan el caso de la señora Hernández porque la realidad es que parol humanitario siempre ha sido una opción para los casos que lo requiere. Entonces, en este caso, no es tanto que está afectado por título 42 o 8, simplemente buscó la manera de aplicar para entrar bajo la opción que tenía, que es un parol humanitario. Y eso siempre existía.
All right, any other questions?
Are we able to get pictures of the young man?
I think we can produce a picture for you. But it will be something that we'll have to produce on a phone. But at least that'll give you some sense of who he is. I'm sorry that this was all done rather hurriedly. So we'll give you a photo from the phone.
Can the mom speak a little bit?
Well, the mom, as you know, as I have said, does not speak English. She left the hospital to come and be with us. Literally, she was at the hospital with her son. And when I first approached her about this, she was reluctant because she was leaving her son. So my suspicion is she desires to get back to her son, and I desire to have her do so. So perhaps at a later time, she will say some things to the press. I'm sure that we'll do a follow-up with you to let you know what we ultimately get done with this circumstance. So let's give her the privilege today of having this time to think through these things. Any other questions? Okay, with no other questions, let me again thank you, the members of the press, for being here. And I want you to know that what you do will make a difference in terms of what will be done for this child. What you do will make a difference in terms of what will be done for this child. So my belief is that, as you always have, you will carry forth a message of truth about this circumstance, and let the world know that we have people who need help, and we have this person that we are helping. We may not be able to save everybody in the world, but those that we can save, I think we have a moral imperative to save, and that's what we're doing today. I thank you so much for being here, and I wish you all the very best. Thank you. Okay. Come with me, doctor. We lost a couple of our constituents. Okay.
Yes, you guys put your email address
down to the dew point.